All right. And welcome back, you guys, to Self-Selecting Podcast. It has been a day. This is going to be the fourth solo I've done today, along with one medium. The first one, just the audio wasn't recorded, or it was, or deleted it, something like that. Point aside, it's been a long day. I'm gonna try to make this less breathy than the last one I just did. The last episode I just recorded was the 60 questions in 60 minutes. That was fun. I like that fast-paced style. So yeah, feeling good. I wanted to record on this topic and talk about this a little bit because um, specifically, you already know because you clicked on the video for that reason. Talking about travel, staying on track, mitigating weight gain. I feel like this is one that a lot of people like they get so in their heads about, and they really think that like, okay, just getting out of their environment, getting out of their bubble is a death sentence to their fitness goals. And that realistically, that it's going to mean they are going to take several steps back. And I don't believe that has to be the case. I think there are times where you can exercise a reasonable amount of self control and you can at least maintain whatever fitness goals you have at hand. There are times where, realistically, it probably is best to skip the trip if you don't have a lot of leeway in gaining weight. And then other times you're probably going to just opt in and be like, yo, I'm going to gain weight. I'm okay with it. I will deal with the collateral once I get back. But let me just kind of set the stage because I've recorded this topic before. I think it was probably, gosh, this had to be episode like 42, 43. And I remember being like kind of disappointed because I wrote out this like super intensive script and like it was based on real life scenarios that I had experienced, also like working with clients. And it didn't perform very well, but what I found is that a lot of my clients who I ended up sharing the episode with, who were going on trips soon after I recorded, they were so grateful and they were so appreciative because they're like, okay, I feel more at ease knowing that I have these actionables and I at least have a sense of how to navigate this, even if it doesn't go perfectly. So seeing that episode was what I mean, 60 episodes ago, over 60 weeks ago, I figured I would re-up, I don't know, do another rendition of this, and more specifically, talk about my most recent travel experience where Jordan and we went to Pennsylvania to see his family. We went from Thursday to Sunday. And I mean, like, if you're familiar with Shikshini, Pennsylvania, Dallas, Pennsylvania, it's a little bit in the middle of fucking nowhere. And this did pose a challenge. It posed a very real challenge. And even though I'm not in contest prep and I don't have a show coming up, I knew going into this trip that I didn't want to come back and feel like total garbage about my body. I knew that I didn't want to overdo it. And regardless of what I weighed in, I wanted to feel like I held on to a semblance of what I've achieved thus far and didn't stray too far off the path of physically how I looked when I left. That's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to take you through exactly how I approached these 3.5, 4 days on the road, completely gone, with very limited access to, foods I would normally eat and a lot on the agenda, also while balancing work. So let me just say, when you're going from the East Coast to the West Coast or West Coast to the East Coast, specifically West to East, you lose a lot of time. And this can be overwhelming logistically, and for a lot of people, make them feel like, well, how do I segment up my macros because there's such significant time change? And there's also, especially for flying, there's such a I guess really restriction into what you can bring with you and then what you have once you're at the airport, what you have once you're on the plane, and then after that as well, which for us, I've made this trip before. Jordan's made this trip a ton of times. He's lived out in California for a long time. So it's not that the discomfort and the long travel days are necessarily unexpected. But for this trip specifically, we ended up going for a flight that left I want to say right around 9. It was supposed to leave at 9. It ended up leaving closer to 10. And this put us in a position where we left our home in San Jose for SFO. We left closer to 6:30, 6:45. And realistically, this is not abnormal, even in terms of like the sleep schedule we would usually follow. So, already out the gate, protecting and prioritizing your sleep going into your first day of travel, that is huge. And I would say just across the board, the more that you can structure, organize, and protect your sleep, the better off you're going to be in terms of hunger signaling. I'll share later how, when I did not do this, how it affected me the next day. But realistically, we got up that morning about 5:30 to get showered, have our coffee before we left, and this isn't how I would normally eat, but given the circumstances, I went ahead and had a 42-gram Fairlife, so a Core Power. If you're not familiar with those are these guys right here. Strawberry is my favorite. They also come in 26-gram. They're phenomenal, and realistically, they are available at most gas stations as well as Safeways, Kroger's, HEBs. They're one that you can find across the country. Like I was a little skeptical. I was like, I wonder if this is just like a California thing, but it's something now, having gone to Texas, having gone to the East Coast, even having gone now to Pennsylvania, and like really like the woods in Pennsylvania, most gas stations will have this. And if they don't, that's okay. They can be found at Costco, the 30-gram bottles that they have. But alternatively, if you can't get these or you don't want to order them in advance, if I was just going off of like, hey, I don't have any on hand, which I'm always going to typically Instacart or make sure that I at least have this stocked up going into a day of travel, you can always look for alternatives like Pillar. Pillar is a Greek yogurt drink. Those can be found at Whole Foods, also Safeways. Past that, there's another drink. This one is very specific to Whole Foods. It's called Slate. But realistically, there are several options as far as protein substitution, ready to drink shakes that you can get. And I'm building all this up because basically I'm trying to say the day of travel, my focus is going to be protein. For this kind of flight, we're going to be in the air almost 6 hours. From there, it's a 2-hour drive from us once we land to his parents' house. So realistically, we're leaving 6:30, not getting into town and getting set up until 10 p.m. EST. So we're going to be gone most of the day, and we're going to be really limited on food intake. Now, I usually don't have my first meal until about 8 or 9. And people always ask, like, okay, when I'm changing time zones or when I'm on the road, how should I adjust nutrient timing? Should I get it in earlier, especially if I'm going to be limited, if I'm going to be in the air and not really have access to a lot of good choices? Should I bring it with me? And you can absolutely bring food with you on planes. Personally, that's just not my preference. I don't like eating around people. It's not something that I necessarily push clients to do either. If you're not comfortable with it, you don't have to. And even on this trip itself, I had 6 calls, and one of them, the girl was in Fort Lauderdale for about a week, and it was soon after we started coaching together, like, it was, like, our 3rd week, and she's like, "Yeah, like, it was so overwhelming because like, I had prepped chicken, but I felt, like, gridlocked because I wasn't comfortable. I was in the middle seat. I felt like there was gonna be some chicken odor to it." And I told her, I was like, "Look, straight up, like, if you're not gonna enjoy the food and you feel like you can wait until you land, or even like in the future you want to have it before you get on the plane, even if you're condensing that nutrient timing window, I'm okay with that." Like, I do think there's some power in actually kind of owning like eating when you're comfortable and when you want to. Like, you don't have to make it a huge thing or force yourself into this box that doesn't really feel good. And really, like, I'm explaining this in a very like unorganized way. Really, what it came down to for me is like, okay, I'm not going to eat on the plane because like the food options are going to kind of suck. Once we get into town, we're probably not going to stop because once we get to his parents' house, we're also going to have dinner. And even though it's going to be late, it's still going to be closer to that 7 p.m. or dinner time that, PST that we would normally eat. So realistically, it doesn't make sense to have a ton of food prior to actually getting on the road. And realistically, we need to get on the road quickly. So that leaves me with very limited time periods to get in food this day. So knowing all this, thinking about it the day in advance, I'm like, cool. Before we leave the house, I'm gonna have one of these guys. That immediately gets me almost to a third of my protein target for the day. For those of you who don't know, I like to hit 150 grams of protein per day at body weight 135 pounds. Um, if, you know, like if you're a little bit on the lower side of that, that's okay. But like still making sure that even on days that whether you're overeating or undereating, I found that something that is like very habit based, I don't know, a habit based action. If you can just be cognizant of the amount of protein you're eating, this in itself is going to make you more aware about around your food decisions. So even if you're not tracking everything to a T, it's still something that I would kind of go out of your way to be like, okay, even if fats are super high today or carbs are completely all over the place or I don't know what I'm going to land at, just being mindful of, okay, no matter what, I'm going to hit my protein. That sets you up for success. So both of us, we had our 42 grams. Jordan gets in 200 grams of protein per day, which is a little, like just a hair above body weight. And realistically, for him, he is always having to source and forage for protein. So before we left, he had a Fairlife and a Slate, so 60 grams. We get to the airport. Also on the way, we made sure like I drink a liter of water in addition to one of these. So liter and a half I'm in by the time my feet hit SFO. We go through security, get to our gate, get some coffee. Uh, I know not all airports have the same accessibility, and some of the options are just really overpriced and really suck. Again, I kind of debated back and forth. I'm like, okay, if we go to the lounge, we could potentially get some food in, but I forget why. I think it was like in a different terminal entirely, and we didn't have enough time to go there and be back at our gate with a reasonable amount of time. So we ended up just heading to our gate, looked at what was around, and for us, like we had access to, it was like a Mexican, I don't know, Mexican California fusion thing, and they did a breakfast burrito and a breakfast bowl. So for me, like I didn't necessarily go in with like, oh, this needs to be under 500 or 600 calories. I went in thinking, okay, I want to get in another 40 grams of protein minimum. Jordan, he again, like he needs to be cognizant of more than just protein because like his BMR, like he will lose if he doesn't eat 3,000, 3,500. Like he gets lean so quickly off such high food. So he ended up opting for a very big breakfast burrito. The bowl I had was quite large, but in it came chicken, probably about 3 ounces. I ordered extra to make it six, and then two whole eggs. So that in itself, I'm like, okay, this meets my protein requirement. And we kind of debated back and forth. I was like, I'm not really hungry because it is so early. Should we just wait and eat on the plane? And he's like, honestly, no, like it's gonna be so long. And even then, they're not gonna be good choices. So let's just have something now. And even if you don't eat all of it, it's still like a good degree of intake to at least get us started. And we kind of pivot from there as needed. So for me, like the potatoes were under, the black beans were not very good. So I mean, like I just kind of ate what I could from the bowl, not really paying hard attention to like how many carbs there were because frankly, I just didn't eat that many. Alternatively, past something like this, if you wanted to look at like even salads or I mean like oh shit, like in FSFO they had poke, which poke for breakfast. Don't know if I'd recommend that from the airport. Um, but there are some airports that do carry Fairlife. They carry Greek yogurt, like even like good brands like Chobani or Fage. Even if you want to look at like protein bars, there are many airports that have protein bars in those actual like Hudson News like centers. Now, you can also bring food with you, and that's something I've done in the past, like especially getting ready for shows. I've brought my protein with me, and this is a super cost-effective way to do this. And I think it's a good idea too, even if you're like myself or my client and you don't want to eat on the plane, just bring it through security, have it in a glass Tupperware, just make sure like afterwards you go and clean it. But you could do a very simple meal and honestly save yourself some money here. But realistically, there are options and it does take planning. It does take being mindful about like how you intend to get protein in. And this was something I kind of I kind of, I don't know, developed this system when Jordan and I went to Tahoe last year. We went with a big group of friends, and we kind of went in thinking like, we're not going to drink, but we are going to float the river. We're going to indulge. But like realistically for him, he needed to get in 4,500 a day to not lose. He was in the middle of a build, and that was the amount that if he was just shy of that, he was starting to see scale weight go down. So I mapped out like as we drove to, I was like, okay, so if we break this down per hour, you need to have this amount of protein at these different points throughout the day for you to be guaranteed that you don't have to go to bed and eat 100 grams right as you're getting into bed. And I think that's typically the method in which I would tell people like, if you just look at your budget almost like a lump sum and then just segment it out, like, okay, realistically, can you break this up over a certain number of meals? Or do you want to just hang on to it, try to hit your protein so that by the end of the day, once protein's complete, you just have fats, carbs, maybe just a little bit of protein to hit? That method has always worked really well for me, especially when travel becomes unpredictable. Now, in the case that you're flying, it's a little bit different than if you're driving. If you're driving, you do have more access to stop and get protein shakes, get real food. Um, Same thing with beverages too. The good thing about like flying is I kind of treat it as like I'm not going to be doing anything. Like I'm literally confined to this seat. So realistically, I should probably try to get in as much fluid as I can so that at least I'm starting this trip off on the right foot. And that's very much what I do almost every time I fly. This time I brought an emptied bottle, a liter and a half, with me on the plane, filled it up before we got on the plane. So I had that, and that still isn't that much fluid to get in over the course of 6 hours. You can get fluid, obviously, from flight attendants if they're offering drinks or, obviously beverages. But this is something just like, again, if you don't know how to keep yourself busy, don't know what you should be focusing on, if you're in this instance where like you don't really have anything to do, but just kind of wait until you arrive at your destination, focus on your fluid. And sure, this can be a pain in the ass if you're in the middle or if you're at the window. We've had this happen where it's like, yeah, like I'm going to drink a liter and a half or 2 liters while I'm taking a 6 hour flight. And that means the person next to me, I kind of have to coordinate like when I'm getting up. So I'm not just annoying them the whole time. But realistically, that is flying. And if you pick aisle, you're kind of rolling the dice too, which is always what I expect when I pick aisle is like either of these people could ask to get up 7 times. And I can't really be mad about that. Actually, 7 times is excessive. I don't think I've ever peed that many times on a plane unless I was water loading. But all this to say, our flight ended up being delayed. We didn't leave till 10. Pretty much the whole way there, just focused on fluid, got a few Diet Cokes. So I think like all in all, it was, I don't know. I know I had a liter and a half. I know I had a liter on the way to the airport, so that's 2.5. I think each diet soda, Diet Coke was 12 or 14 ounces. So in my mind, I was like, cool, like we're getting closer to that 3, 4 liter mark. Um, by the time we got in, I was a little bit hungry, but we still had to go pick up our rental car. And we got to the rental car place. It took about an hour. And at that point, that again put us now 2 hours back in total from the time we thought we were going to get in. So at this point, I got in 42 grams in the morning, maybe another 40 to 50 from that second meal. But realistically, I am 2/3 of the way there in terms of my protein intake. So I'm feeling good. And carbs and fats have been minimal. I did have the Biscoff cookies on the way, like on the plane. They were given out. I'm always pretty much going to say yes, unless I'm getting ready for a show and just truly can't. Um, After we got the rental car, we talked about it and we had a 2 hour drive ahead. We coordinated with his brother because we were going to surprise his mom. And it was kind of this thing like his brother was asking, like, hey, I'm going to bring over pizza. Is it okay if I like stop at your house and eat it? And Jordan told me like initially, he's like, hey, you're not locked in to eat anything that we eat. Like food selection is a little limited. His family is really great about food, yes, but he's like, we're probably going to have some things that are higher calories. So like, don't feel like you're obligated to eat anything you don't want to. No one's going to say anything, which frankly, I'm very used to. Like my family is very supportive and sure, they'll make comments, but they're not nasty about it. I'll say, like, I do have some family members that are just kind of bullies when it comes to me eating a little cleaner or eating less. And they are very intrusive to the point that, like, it is actually bullying, very much giving me a hard time and, like, almost like oh, you're not going to have this. I paid for this. And, that's not ideal. But realistically, it's also not a fight I'm going to win. Like, that is the case a lot of the times with the clients that I work with when we go through like different instances of, what are the challenges going into this trip? How supportive is your family? How much of a hassle is it going to be for you to bring your own meal over to your parents' house or over to your siblings? And in the case that people are just kind of annoying or just kind of dicks about how you want to eat, an effective method I found is always just kind of like like playing it, like putting it back on me, like, oh, sorry, I'm gonna be weird about my food. You know how I am. Like, it doesn't have to be a big deal. And realistically, like, I think there was a point where I did used to get like bent out of shape about it. Like, I would take it personally and I would already be stressed going into the event. And the more that you can minimize your food stress and your stress about the situation going in, the better you'll be able to respond, especially if there is dialogue or commentary around your food decisions. But honestly, just like you can be self-deprecating. You can be like, "Yeah, you know how I am. I'm fucking weird about my food and like that's why I brought it cuz like I'm OCD." Like whatever you need to say, just like get through the interaction. And I've done this with grandparents. I've done this with siblings, with cousins. Not siblings. Actually, my sister is so cool about this and she's always like gone out of her way to be like, "We're going to order this, but I don't assume that you want to eat this," which is I'm very fortunate to have that. But point aside, uh, going to Jordan's that night, the plan was to eat pizza. And realistically, even though I had the calories, I was like, I'm not going to try to macro Tetris this because I know I could probably eat 2 to 3 slices. And realistically, I know there's going to be untracked meals this weekend. And I don't want to I don't want to um, meet my caloric allowance for today when I could just use some of those calories for another day, almost let them like roll over. And that's another mindset shift that I think is helpful too, is almost thinking about like in the course of 4 days, the easiest days to control food are going to be your travel days because you're probably not at your destination, or a lot of the time you don't have the same accessibility to food, which is actually a good thing if you're trying to restrict food. Not a good thing if you're Jordan and you need to get in food. But in this case, I'm like, okay, Thursday, Sunday, those are the days I should be pretty tight with food choices. Friday, Saturday, maybe I leave some food over from Thursday and Sunday. That way, if things go awry or if I order something that's a little more calorically dense, I'm not in the weeds and not for sure going to be at maintenance or in a surplus. Or if I'm already going to be in a surplus, I'm not in a super surplus. So Thursday, we get in, we're on our way, and like we agreed, we're like, let's stop at the gas station, get another Fairlife, because at this point we know pizza is going to be waiting for us. We know we're going to have pizza. And even though I was like, I'm going to probably have a slice, like, in that's ultimately what I ended up having, a slice. And then I literally split one down the middle with scissors with Jordan. So, I mean, like, at most 500-600 calories because they were pretty dense. But past that, I'm like, okay, I still need to hit my protein and I'm not going to do that with the pizza. So that puts me into action mode where I'm like, cool, I need to stop and get protein. And Jordan's really great about this stuff too. So it's actually quite easy to do this kind of logistical play. He's so good about planning. So we agreed, we're like, we'll stop at the gas station about an hour out. So what we ended up doing, looking at like just overall macros for the day at this point, I'm like, so I for sure had 120, maybe 160, 120, maybe 150 grams, depending on how much was in that morning bowl. I ended up opting to get a barbell bar as well, so a protein bar. And this one was 200. It was, I think it's like 7 fat, some amount of carbs, and then 20-ish grams of protein. So it was like, cool. So going into pizza for tonight and then going to bed, I for sure will have hit 150 minimum, but I maybe even have hit 170 or 180 grams of protein, which is kind of nice if for whatever reason tomorrow I'm a little bit short. I have some rollover protein. I can kind of think about that with that in mind. Oh, and the other thing too, I didn't want to go into pizza that night and be too hungry and then kind of throw the plan out the window and be like, well, I haven't eaten anything all day. I've only had protein, so I can have 3 to 4 slices. And that's very much what I've done in the past, where I've gone into these situations, not really setting myself up for success and then ultimately overeating on a really high calorie food. So this is what I want you to take away. If you're going to be eating a high calorie food, pizza, pasta, desserts, something that's just easy to overconsume, I would go into that meal already fed somewhat, even having a little bit more protein or a little bit more volume. That way, you're not going into it already at a disadvantage, knowing that hunger signaling is going to be high and it's going to take like 20, 30 minutes for you to realize how full you're actually getting, which for me, for pizza, like that's going to be done. 3 slices, 4 slices in 20 minutes is not difficult to do. So, I told Jordan, that was like I don't even know if I walked him through that, but that was my thought process with getting the barbell bar as well, and at that point, I had very little carbs and fats that day, so, um, yeah, going into pizza at night, I was like, "Okay, so, like, it's enjoyable, but as much as I might want to eat 2 or 3 slices still at this point, and maybe it wouldn't be that detrimental, it's hard to track." And that's realistically how I go about making decisions when I'm eating out, when I'm traveling or eating in times where I can't really be 100% strict with food reporting, is if something has a very high likelihood of being more calories than I assume, then logistically, I'm going to eat less of it because I'm going to assume that whatever I'm logging is probably not accounting for total caloric amount of said food. So this is very much the case. If it's pizza, pasta, anything like super fried or anything super fatty, I'm just going to assume that controlling the portion is actually going to really help me in my favor of controlling calories for the day. Oh, also, so when we stopped at the gas station, this was also part of the discussion. I was like, I'm going to get 2 more of these just for me. And then I got him 2 more as well. And my thought process was like, okay, for sure, there's going to be a point, Friday or Saturday, where we need more protein. Whether that be because we didn't eat, whether that be because it's the end of the night, and that ended up really coming in clutch the next morning because we got up, we're at his mom's. She's like, "Do you want me to make breakfast?" And she started pulling out like really high calorie granolas that she knows I love. Like I've told her, like, "Oh my God, those things are addicting." And truly they are, but they are also very high calorie. So, just some sidebar. I had 6 calls this weekend. I slept like shit Thursday night. It was very warm and where we were sleeping. The bed wasn't super comfortable. It's a full side bed. We're both pretty crammed. So I think I got like 2 hours of sleep. And this in itself was also a realization for me. I'm like, okay, I need to really lock in today with food because I'm not my best self. Like being underslept, underrested, having to work and having to also manage just simply like Wi-Fi hotspots not working because we're literally in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. It's like, okay, well, I'm more than likely going to make bad food decisions if I don't really think about it today. And that's a level of awareness I really try to offer clients. I'm like, if you know you're prone to go off track, don't put yourself in a position where it's super easy to go off track. Like, that's like knowing that you're not going to be faithful in your relationship and then putting yourself in a position where it's very easy to not be faithful. Don't do it. Don't do it. Just set yourself up for success. Go home early. End the opportunity to potentially deviate with food. And in this case, I knew the next morning, I was like, okay, well, it's quite early for PST. I already know I'm not slept. I'm going to try to put off food for a little bit because usually I wouldn't eat till like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. PST, which is going to be middle of the afternoon, right at lunchtime EST. His mom asked, she's like, do y'all want some breakfast? Do you want me to make something? We're like, no, that's okay. And I think she had something to do that morning. So it was fine. We're like, Jordan's like, Cory's going to do her calls. And then from there, we're going to go see his dad. We get to his dad's house. His dad's like, hey, sorry, I don't have anything here for breakfast. We surprised both of them. So, he's like, we could go get something. And again, both of us are like, no, it's okay. Like, let's just focus on the quality time together. Realistically, I know this isn't the case for a lot of us. And even going to see my family, it wouldn't necessarily be exactly like that. But even if we, let's say, decided like, hey, we're going to have, a full sit down breakfast with the family, this would have been an opportunity for me to be like, cool, I'm going to have a cup of yogurt, so 100 to 140 calories, and some berries. I'm not going to go crazy with the granola. I'm going to probably have that alongside of Fairlife, get in like 60 grams of protein, really like front load the protein in this sense so that if anything becomes untracked later in the day, I'm already ahead on the protein and I've already, one, paid attention to hunger signaling and set myself up to at least not be under on protein, but then also two, I can go in with a little bit more budget for carbs and fats. We didn't end up doing that. We ended up just having the Fairlife, but went to his dad's for a few hours. And then on the way home, we stopped, caught up with one of his childhood friends, and it was on the way to his friend's house. Jordan's like, "How are you doing?" He's really easy when it comes to food. Like he can go a super long time without eating. Um, and in this case, he's like, "I just want to make sure you're not like starving. Like I don't want to be a bad influence either." Which I don't know if I mentioned this. We both had our Fairlives that morning and just like took off to his dad. So at that point, we're like 200 to 300 calories in, 42 grams of protein in. On the way to Shane's house, though, I was like, yeah, let's actually stop because our plan that night was to make dinner for his mom. We were actually going to do a pasta recipe. So we're like, we'll go to the store, we'll be in control of the types of foods that we're including in here and the ingredients and the amounts of like higher fat content. Um, but that wasn't going to be till 5. So I was like, okay, realistically, at this point, we've only had 200 to 300 calories. It was like 1, 2 o'clock, maybe 2:30. And I'm like, I'm hungry enough that I'm probably going to eat too much pasta or eat a little more ravenously than I want to. So let's again like delay some of that hunger. So we stopped at a gas station, got another Fairlife, got another barbell bar. So at this point, we're maybe 600 calories in, but again, close to 100 grams of protein. So in my head, I'm like, ding, 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 like this is great. Another day where I'm almost complete. I have one meal left, and I know that like I can for sure hit my protein through this meal. But even if I don't, even if for some reason we don't find shrimp or I have very little protein in the pasta meal, I can still have that extra Fairlife that I bought the day before. So this is where we ended up stopping, getting that. So we're both at roughly 100 grams of protein. I think Jordan had a little bit more. I forget what he had. But we go to the store, get everything for pasta. We have a really good pasta dish that realistically like is quite high protein. It's about 60 to 70 grams for that meal. And we make this like 5 nights a week. Like it's super fun, very micronutrient dense, very low fat. And then the fats that we do include are very healthy fats. So overall a win. But given that like we don't have access to the same ingredients, we're not using a protein pasta. I think the one that we use is called Brammy. So it has like a little bit of extra protein per serving. Um, we ended up going with shrimp because that's what his mom had on hand. And she like insisted, like, hey, let's use this. So overall, really good spread going into this pasta dish. And generally, I know it comes out, it's like 15 grams of fat, maybe 50 grams of carbs and like 70 grams of protein for like quite a nice serving. But also I can infer that like we're not using the same pasta that we used before. We're not weighing things because we didn't bring scales with us, which I don't always think is necessary. But realistically, I know it's kind of in that ballpark. Like it's a pretty dense meal, but at the same time, it's very filling. And it is easy to track on account of we made it, which I know that was gonna bug me, so I just went ahead and did the math. Like 600 to 700 calories usually is what it would run us. So knowing that and knowing that at this point I already had 600 calories, so again, still incredibly low for the day relative to the 1500 I would usually hit, but very heavy emphasis on protein. I'm like, cool, okay, so I have a little bit more food that before bed I can have a small snack. I can have something if, his mom does make something. There's not a ton of budget left, but I'm definitely not over at, let's say, 5 p.m. EST, which is really 3 p.m. No, really 2 p.m. PST. We ended up going to like a play that night. So we got home, I'm trying to think what time. It was pretty late. And at that point, I was pretty snacky. And I was like, okay. His mom like offered like charcuterie and like she had a lot of like high calorie snacks that I was like, I really want. I think like I took her up on like literally like just a tiny piece of like, it was like fig cheese. It was good. Not super strict on tracking this, but like it was truly like a single, maybe 1 ounce serving. And then from here, Jordan's like, okay, like his mom went to sleep, his brother left, and we're like, okay, so I know at most 13, maybe 1400 calories, which I know I'm backtracking. Maybe I didn't mention like with the pasta, I intentionally was like, let me take a smaller serving than what I usually would. And like we separated the shrimp and the pasta. So I took an amount of shrimp that I'm like, this looks like what we would normally have if we made it ourselves. But then the pasta itself and the filling, like the sofrito, that was something I was like, okay, I usually have a glass Tupperware container and I can fill the whole thing. And that's the amount of pasta that I have. So even though we don't have a scale, I can be pretty certain that for sure I'm not over that. But because we're not in control of the type of pasta that we have, it's just a standard type that's a little bit higher carb, maybe a little bit higher fat. I'm going to take just a little bit less just to offset that, which again, you don't have to do any of this, but for me, it was like, this is a pretty easy thing to do at this point, and it's ultimately going to set me up so that when I get back, my weight's not going to be crazy high up. Because historically, yes, there are a lot of trips I've been on where coming home, I see the scale weight, and I'm like, yep, this is exactly what I would expect given how I ate, given the food decisions I made. So Saturday rolls around. It's our final day here. Yes, we're going to leave on Sunday. It's going to be super early. But Saturday, we kind of did the same thing. His mom asked, do you want me to make something for breakfast? She was actually going out for breakfast, so it worked out perfectly. Kind of did the same thing. We went and saw a friend. So on the way to that friend's house, we both had a 42 gram. So cool, third of the way on protein there. Then we went to his dad's. His dad's like, hey, do y'all want to eat? We're like, we actually have dinner plans with his mom not too long from now, so we're just going to hold off. Skipping foods, like I know it can feel a little uncomfortable. It can feel like you're disappointing your parents or company. But realistically, if his dad was like, hey, I want to go out to eat, we would have gone out with him and we would have had something. And I know for me, like it's very easy to just get a very simple salad or to just get a chicken breast with veggies. Don't feel overwhelmed or like obligated to eat how the people around you eat. And yes, like prepare for commentary, prepare for them to be like, is there something wrong? Like, I don't know, like, prepare for them to say something. Realistically, it can be just that. It can just be commentary and then you can just move on, but it doesn't have to be a huge deal. And especially if you have family that's very pushy or is like, oh, you don't need to lose weight. I don't know why you're tracking calories. Just be like, no, like, my stomach, it's a little sensitive or whatever you need to. Just fucking lie. Just get out of it. Okay. But this is something a lot of people, they will tell me they like stress and obsess about. They're like, I don't know how to combat the commentary from my family. Do whatever you need to. Like, just you can make it about you being weird. It doesn't have to be true, but like, just realistically, it's that you're making them uncomfortable because now they probably feel like they should be eating the way you're eating, and that's where I never want my family to feel. Like, I want to instill my beliefs on them. Some people are assholes like that. I don't want my family to feel embarrassed or insecure about how they eat. It doesn't have to resemble how I eat. I'm very much the outlier. And I think when you can kind of shift that perspective and really make it like, hey, like they're probably saying something, hopefully it's not ill intended or out of malice or to make you feel uncomfortable, but they're probably saying something because how you're eating and how you're taking care of yourself, it's making them a little insecure. And the more you can do to reassure them, like, no, 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 this is a me thing. You don't have to do this. Like, don't feel bad. Then I don't know. It seems to always work well for me. I know that's not going to be the case 100% of the time. Some people are just assholes and they'll make comments either way. So what do we do next? Went to see his friend, went to his dad, didn't eat at his dad, had plans with his mom that night. Yeah, so we had a dinner reservation. But by the time we got there, by the time we got back to his mom's, we still had about 5 hours before dinner. And we were both like, okay, we're kind of hungry. And like we didn't stop to get any more protein shakes. I think for some reason we were stocked up, but we were both like, I kind of want a real meal because the place we were going out to, it was going to be steak, seafood. I very much planned for it to be an untracked meal. But again, it was the same thought process with like, I don't want to be ravenous going into it. So his brother asked, like, okay, where do y'all want to eat? Like, we can order something in, we can go pick it up. And Jordan had been telling me about an Italian sub place for a long time. And he's like, well, we can go there. We can get it delivered. And he kind of outlined, he's like, these subs are huge. Like it's going to be a 10 to 12-inch sub for half. And like realistically, like it's going to be pretty calorically dense. So I told him, I'm like, I would probably eat half of a half. I'd probably eat a quarter. If that interests you, I'm happy to split in whatever way we need to. And he's like, honestly, I'd rather just have a quarter too. So we ended up just getting a whole 24-inch. His brother ate the entire half, and then Jordan and I split the other one, which realistically was a really like strategic option for both of us. I mean, yes, it was very dense and there was meat and there was cheese, and we made sure to order like vinegar, oil, mayo on the side. That way we could apply like what we wanted, not just being left to whatever the person served us. But That in itself, I mean, like, I gotta say a true honestly, maybe the quarter that I had was 700. There's a lot of protein. It's hard to know exactly how much, but I'm not gonna sweat it. I had 42 grams that morning. I knew I was gonna have a heavy protein meal that night because it was gonna be seafood. So this in itself, I'm like, cool. Okay, so this fills in the gap. Some of the rollover calories from the last 2 days, also the rollover calories from this morning. This counts as seemingly a reasonable lunch. It was delicious, but that leaves us with that final meal. And we went into it, and Jordan's like, okay, well, like I'm gonna have a steak. They have a Delmonico here. They hammered the shit out of it. It was the seasoning was good, but it was way overdone. But that had to be like an 18-ounce steak. Like it was very fatty, very dense. He ended up getting that. He loves red meat. He also needs the calories. I ended up getting salmon. Salmon, maybe 10 ounces. I ended up cutting maybe a third off for him. He gave me a few bites of steak. So again, like kind of mentally tracking, like I'm not going to go 50-50 with him. And if we weren't going to do a lot of splits, which we tend to do anyway when we go out to eat, this in itself still is a very high protein, yes, high fat because of the salmon, and then like bread and things like that come to the table as well. But all in all, like the sides, pretty reasonable. I got a twice baked potato. So I mean like a pretty decent sized baked potato. And with that, I just cut it in half. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna eat half of it. And that will be my allowance. Like I just portioned it out in my head. And I think a lot of people, they're like, well, if I am ordering this, and I don't know how big it's going to be, then like I don't really know necessarily how to approach tracking it. And that's where learning how to just track on the fly and kind of just like take accountability for like, okay, that potato was bigger than I expected. And I know that like a 200-gram potato raw comes out to this amount of carbs. So realistically, I don't need to eat past a certain point. And that's where, like, trust me, guys, like my hunger signaling has been very fucked most of my life. My parents have kind of raised me in a way that it was very offensive to leave food. It was like, you're not getting up from the table until you finish what's on your plate. And there was a lot of encouragement of overeating, over consuming, very little guidance on like how to listen to hunger signaling. And that's something that I don't think is just specific to me. I think a lot of you listening to this have experienced this as well. And that's where it's so important to kind of when you're going out to kind of think about like I was served 10 ounces, maybe more of salmon. In no setting where I'm eating at home and making salmon am I gonna accidentally eat 10 to 12 ounces of salmon. That sounds delicious and I can house it, but at the same time, like that's not congruent with my caloric needs or my fitness goals. And that's where it's very easy for me now to kind of get into that habit of like, well, if I was making this at home, what would the portion size actually look like? And I think if you can do that with all of your carbs, fats, and proteins, and almost think about like, okay, if me making it at home, if that's the most accurate it's going to be in terms of tracking, if I know that a specific portion size is like the upper limit of what I can have, why would I justify having more if I'm trying to keep this as like a somewhat tracked meal, or at least be aware of how many calories it's going to be, which that's kind of how I categorize this. It wasn't a tracked meal, but I did pay attention to portion sizes. From here, oh, you know what? No, we also got appetizers. We did a French onion soup and we did clams. The clams I had 3 of. They were kind of shitty. Like they weren't great, but sure, protein. The French onion soup. Yes, it comes with like cheese and like bread and stuff. Realistically, I had so much of the broth, and Jordan, I mean, like he had some of the broth too, but he had a lot of the high calorie aspects of it. It's like I almost condense it down into like, okay, something that's delicious that I know is high fat or high carb. I'll have a bite or two. If it's really good, I'll have 2 bites, but there is a certain point where I'm like, okay, I can probably eat more of this than I realistically should. So let me just go into this deciding like I'm going to have a certain amount of bites and then I'm going to decide I'm satisfied. It's not about actually being full or like telling yourself you don't want more. You can want more, but it's about establishing boundaries with like I know if I eat to satisfaction, like true like fullness, like hunger fullness, it's probably going to be more calories than I actually want to afford here. So I think honestly thinking about it that way, it can bring a lot of awareness to hunger signaling as well as like I don't know, just caloric spending. And that's very much how I look at it. And that largely is the trip in itself. Like after that, his mom wanted ice cream, so we did go to like a local, I want to say brewery, but I don't think that sounds right. A local spinnery ice cream shop that's like very famous for the ice cream being very fresh and like the cows being across the street. And, we got like a little cup, and realistically, I'm like, it was good. But I also told Jordan after eating like half of it because it was like probably two good scoops. I was like, I'm good. If he wants the rest, great. If his mom wants some or the people we were with, if they want some, also fine. But I think it's okay to tell the people around you, like, hey, I'm not going to finish all this. Like, can you commit to eating this with me? Or maybe I don't get it at all if you don't have that kind of commitment. And the good thing is, like with Jordan, I have, kind of established that as like that's something I do very often. So he's very used to me saying, like, no, 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 I'm done. And then he'll kind of finish the rest so the food isn't totally wasted. So the next day, we got up stupid early. Got up so early, 2:30 in the morning, and we had a pretty late night. We went to the casinos there, and it was a long day. Like, we didn't get home, like, we got up 2:30 EST, ended up getting home, gosh, it was close to 12 PST, so it was long, and luckily, we did sleep a good portion of the plane ride, but we made sure to have a Fairlife before we got on the plane. We still had one extra. He stopped, and actually, I don't think they had bars out that morning or more Fairlife, but once we got back to our place in California, that was at the point I'm like, okay, hunger is really, really high just on account of not sleeping well, being up pretty much all night, being uncomfortable. But we're also really tired just from, again, not sleeping, also being on East Coast time. So we ended up just having a sandwich, a very similar sandwich to the one we had before. And knowingly, I opted in. I'm like, I kind of want this to be my untracked meal, like truly in its essence, like be a meal that is higher calorie. And even though at the time I was like, oh, like this is probably a little bit more than I need in this moment, I was like, okay, you did really good over the trip. You're back home. Probably going to go to bed as soon as you finish eating this. So realistically, you've had 42 grams of protein. I ended up having another Fairlife with the sandwich as my beverage, and then also a yogurt with some berries. So I mean, like all in all, it did come out to a very similar protein intake for the day, with my only carbs and fats really coming from the sandwich itself. So all this to say, before I left, it was 135.8 ish. When I got back, it was 136.8. I think I might be off a little bit on the one of those weights. But it was very similar. And like, I mean, digestion was a little bit off. So I mean, like there's some leeway there. But realistically, I came back feeling so good, despite not training, maybe getting in 2,000 steps every single day, not sleeping well. I stayed on top of my water the best I could. And I would say at least 3 of the 4 days, I for sure got a gallon in. And realistically, every day I didn't skip any protein. And I do think the calories were largely controlled. So, uh, all this to say, when I have shared these kind of, I don't know, instances with clients, like my client who was in Fort Lauderdale, I kind of walked her through my thought process. And the feedback that I've gotten is that it's super helpful to understand like decision making when you're traveling, when you're on the road. So that was really the idea here. Is I have shared this story or shared aspects of this story with different clients who are really stressed about traveling or being around the family, or not knowing like on heavy travel days like how to actually get in all this food. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.